Welcome to the Ideas on Stage podcast, your regular insight into leadership communication.
Mark, thank you very much for being on the show.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate you.
Of course. Mark, you may remember the first time we met was a couple of years ago. And the reason why we met was because we have some connections in common. And one of these friends told me, you need to speak to Mark, because apparently at the time, I don't know why, but you were looking, if I understood well, you were looking for some improvements in your presentations or something like that. And so what I did, I watched your TEDx talk in Cardiff, which I think we are recording this in, what is it now, 23rd of April.
Yeah.
And it's just hit more than 800,000 views,
yeah,
right?
It's just, yeah. I mean, you know what was interesting is it was the 3rd anniversary yesterday, April 22nd, 2017 is when I stepped on stage in Cardiff. And yesterday was the 3-year anniversary and we hit 800,000 views. And I say we because it's a team effort. It's like everyone shared it. Everyone has been posting it on their, from Instagram to LinkedIn to newsletters to websites. It's like, it's just been crazy.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was it. Yeah. 3 years ago.
Oh, fantastic. And I watched that talk and I was supposed to meet you to talk about effective presentations. And I said, well, what do I tell him? This guy that doesn't need to improve at all. So I don't know what the purpose of that meeting was, but it's really an amazing talk. What they don't tell you about entrepreneurship, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and just to clarify what you were saying. So I think what's really important is that it doesn't matter what level you are in your game, you've always got incremental changes you can make to get better. And so even though, I'm a very confident speaker, I think I'm good at what I do. I think I deliver great value. I always want to find an edge. And so what happened, I think it was just to clarify, I remember it was Chris who said, because I said, I want to learn how to sell more authentically from stage. That was it. It was like, because I'm great at delivering this presentation, I'm great at giving talks, but I feel awkward around selling, around pitching, and I really want to change that. It's like, oh, there's this guy, one of my accelerators, you should link up. And at the time, I remember because you were there was different things you were doing. You were and I think it was like you were focusing on some stuff in Italian, is what my memory was. Yeah, this really big following in Italian, but you were hesitating between should I do it in Italian, should I do it in English? And then the breakfast became just kind of me mentoring and coaching and talking around all your stuff. We had breakfast at Leon. And just before we recorded this, and I want to say this publicly, I want to acknowledge you because what's been amazing is to see you really build that authority in your field around hear how you do effective and less boring presentations, to see you from running all your workshops and your the questionnaires, all that kind of stuff. So it's been really great. So it's good to catch up again. We've both got still the beards, so things.
Thank you so much, Mark. I appreciate it. And the reason why I enjoyed your talk so much was for two reasons. One, because the subject itself resonated a lot with me, because I also run my own business. So you talk about entrepreneurship, and also because you were very honest. So normally, I don't know about you, but normally if I see a title online which says what they don't tell you about something, it's not my stuff, because it seems that nobody tells us anything now. But in your case, it was spot on. It was really powerful and honest. So I want to also thank you on behalf of the 800,000 people who watched that talk. And for those who haven't watched it yet, would you like to tell us what was the gist? What was the core message behind that presentation?
Can I give something maybe better and give you some context around that talk? I think that might be helpful. So real quick, and maybe some people listening to this, you might relate to this. I've always had this dream of giving a TED talk, a TEDx talk. Like I went through a tough time in 2009 and I binge watched TEDx talks, like how to find your the great work you should be doing and why great leaders and all this stuff. And it was always like this benchmark of like, oh my God, it'd be so cool to go and give a talk. And then in 2016, I think it was, I joined a public speaking accelerator. It was like a completely new thing online. There's a small group of us. It was ridiculously cheap back then. It was led by a guy called Alex Mary, and we were kind of like getting on this, and he was like, look, and he was the TEDx Clapham curator. So he's the guy who founded TEDx Clapham. And effectively he was like, look guys, if you want to land a TEDx talk, here's what you need to know. And so we went through that process, and I ended up getting invited to speak at TEDxCardiff. Now people listening to this, you need to understand that I was once invited to go and do a TEDx talk at Antwerp in Belgium, and it was canceled like, I want to say a couple of months before the event. And that was really embarrassing because I told the whole world and everybody that I was going to give a TEDx talk and my life was made. And then I looked like a total fool to having to contact everyone and said, actually, it's been canceled. It wasn't even that it was canceled. It was that they realized they had too many coachy type speakers. And so they dropped me, which is even worse. It's even more embarrassing, right? Because you're like, oh my God, I didn't even make it like the cut. So anyway, so I get invited to this TEDxCardiff talk, and I am like, okay, I think I know what the talk is. And for those who are interested in giving compelling talks, and we can talk about this in a second, but there's a great concept, which is the same thing in books and in talks. You need to have a compelling through line, which is, it's a conducting idea that throughout the entire talk or the entire book, you stick everything to it. So if a story doesn't help you prove that point, you get rid of it. If that example doesn't help, you get rid of it. And so my through line, the first version of my talk, the through line was something like, what you seek is clarity, but what you need is trust. Okay? That was like my talk. Basically what I was trying to say is everyone's trying to get clarity on what they should do, when that's never going to happen, because clarity comes through action. It doesn't come through thought. That was like the principle. Okay. So I go off and I develop this talk over 5 months. I lose sleep over it. I get into arguments in my relationship with, I stress about it. Meanwhile, my partner gets pregnant. I had just quit my job a few months before that. So all this is happening. I'm starting a company, starting a family, and this TEDx talk is coming along. And one of the challenges I decided to do was 21 days out of this talk, I thought the only way I'm going to make this talk good is if I test it. And so I committed to testing it to 21 friends over 21 days in 21 different locations, which enabled me to reconnect with friends, revisit places of London I never knew, and practice my talk. And so I went on this journey. Mate, it was one of the most brutal experiences I've ever done. Like, it's not like I can share with you at the end, if we've got time, about like some of the worst experiences. Well, not worst, I want to reframe that, challenging experiences, public speaking. But going into, and then like cold practicing this TEDx talk that I'd written about what you need is trust, not clarity. You know, I'd be delivering 60 minutes of this talk, and then I'd get blank faces, or I'd get like this really awkward feedback, or yeah, kind of like that. And I just hated it. Every time I gave it, it was like more and more awkward, and I wasn't into it. 10 days before the actual event, so it must have been around the 12th of April, 2017. I'm like, oh, that was it. That was it. I practice the talk with Alex from the Speak Accelerator thing. And he takes me to Hyde Park Corner, and he gets me to practice it in the Hyde Park Corner in front of him, and everybody's walking by, and I'm practicing it. And I see his face. Like, Alex has got a very good poker face. And he's kind of looking at me, and I go, wait, before you give me feedback, there's actually this other talk that I've been thinking about that I really want to talk about.
No way.
And I start going into it, and it was basically about how I'm tired of all this BS. I don't know how much I can swear on this podcast, but all this BS.
Yeah, you can.
Okay. All this bullshit around entrepreneurship and how like how amazing it is, and how much it's more freedom, more life, or, you know, all this stuff. The holy grail of happiness is entrepreneurship, when in fact it's one of the hardest things you'll ever do in your life. And it's a crazy adventure to go in when you know that 80% of people fail, you know, all this stuff. And I give this talk, and he goes, that's your talk. Forget, like, that's what you need to do. And so 10 days out, I scrapped everything I'd worked on for 5 months, and I had to reconstruct everything. And that was a crazy journey, man. Cause like in 10 days I had to rewrite the whole thing. I was riddled with self-doubt around, why am I doing this? Who am I to do this? Is it even going to work? Big shout out to a guy called Amrish Shah, a friend of mine who was also a friend of my brother back in our uni days. And when I used to live in South Africa, we ended up living at the same time there. And he's amazing because he's a character. He's a performing type. And I practiced my new version of the talk. And he's the one that said, can I be honest with you? And I was like, yeah. He's like, that's really boring. You're not boring. that talk's boring. It's not you. And I was like, oh my God, this is like 5 days out now. And I'm like, what you said? And basically, but he gave me the best tip I got. He said, you need to inject some of your personality in this talk. And right now you're not giving yourself permission to do that. I was like, okay. And he's the one that basically prompted me to do the opening of my talk. Now I'm not going to spoil it.
Yeah, because that was also one of my questions, but we'll talk about it.
Yeah. So I'm not going to spoil it, but go and check it out because the opening has got a funny story behind it. We were in Hampstead Heath, and I practiced my talk, and that's where he said, you really got to take this character that you're describing and blow it up, make it like a caricature. And so that's how that character was born. And then, so I then started doing it. But here's the really awkward thing, dude. I was practicing that talk in front of people the next like 2 or 3 days, and it was bombing. Like when I was doing my opening, no reactions, nothing. Not a laugh, not nothing. And I'm like going, oh my God, is this really going to work? I was still practicing my talk on the train on the way to Cardiff. My partner is pregnant at the time. My mum's flying in from France. I've got friends coming from all over to come and see this talk. And I'm having a meltdown because I'm like, I don't know the words. I don't know this talk. Up until 1 o'clock or midnight the night before, I'm practicing. And then a partner did, and I forgot about this. It's funny, I haven't relived this in a very long time. My mum was kind of like, she'd left by then because she was in the hotel. We went for dinner. I think she left. My partner took the script away from me and said, that's it. You're done. No more script. You don't need the script. Like, you are the script. Forget about the script. Forget about the words. What are you trying to say? What is the emotion that you're trying to connect the audience to? Go with that. Screw the words. You don't need the words. And she told me go. And because I was practicing it. Like, a lot of people don't realize this. Like, my talk's got 800,000 views. Yeah. The months and hours of work behind it. Like, for me, I think there are TEDx talks and there's TEDx talks. There's amazing TEDx talks. And then there's like people who just totally winged it. Even people at the event I was were winging it. And I was like, it's absolute disrespect for the audience. It's a disrespect for the organizers. So anyway, all that to come then to actual D-Day, we get a practice run in the morning. Okay. So practice, was it in the morning? Was it the day before? Might be the day before. I don't remember. But we get there. I start opening my talk. The whole system crashes. The presentation crashes. My deck crashes. The lights crash. Everything. This is halfway through my thing. And I'm like, worst comes to worst, I don't think anything's going to be worse than this tomorrow or later today. Right? And so then I get to the stage. My friends are coming in. Like, clients have flown in. Really special buzzing moment. I'm in the stage. I'm sitting there and I'm singing. I know my time's coming. And the hilarious thing, for those of you who are going to go watch my talk, this will give you some context. The talk before my talk was all about how you should quit your job and follow your dreams and go and start your business.
Okay.
And I'm sitting on the aisle, like on the corner of the, whatever you call it, on the backstage going, wow, well, this is going to be awkward because my talk is going to be a very different flavor. And then I get on stage, and I always remember this. I mean, it went like that. Honestly, it felt like a split of a second, the whole experience. Side note, for those of you about to give a TEDx talk or a talk with that kind of side, whether that's online or in person, pause at the end, soak it in, make an exit. So I get on stage, and I deliver the first line, and the audience laughs.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh shit.
It's working.
It's working, yeah. And you can ask my partner, she'll tell you, that moment is the moment she relaxed. Because she knew I had it. And then, I made a few mistakes, and there's a few things that I could criticize myself about, but honestly, it felt like a split of a second, and I could have never imagined the impact that talk had, the movement it kind of started, everything, how my business, everything would have changed after that.
And that's the power of a great presentation, isn't it?
Hopefully the background story gives you a bit more context.
No, that's unbelievable. I would have never imagined, Mark, that that's what happened in preparation for that talk.
Yeah.
I thought that was the talk that you had been preparing for months, yes.
No.
But no, okay, interesting. Actually, let's talk about this introduction, Mark.
Yeah.
It was one of the things that, of course, captured my attention from the very beginning. And could you tell, for those who haven't watched it, could you tell us what you did and why did you do that instead of just saying, okay, my name is Mark and today I want to tell you about blah, blah, blah?
Well, I just told you that. It's basically because it was boring. So the thing about, especially if you're into that genre of talks like TED Talks, any of my keynotes, any talk, the first few seconds is where the audience is going to determine, should I pay attention or not? You don't have time to say, hi, really great to be here. It's a real pleasure to be invited at this. No, you don't have time. Like, that's why like TED Talks are notorious for starting like that. Like, a lot of them is, one of my favorite ones is the guy literally starts by saying, I think, that was it. I was raised by two lesbians on a mountain. And then you're like, whoa, what is this? And then another one is, I became a master at getting kicked out of foster homes. Another one's like, I never cried until the day my dad died. Like, just these, you start with something, even if you go back. So Rupi Ojla, who's just got his TEDx come out of Brighton, the guy from the Doctor's Kitchen, who's come on my show, go and watch his TEDx talk. The opening is brilliant. I told him, like, his opening's so good. It's like, it was a Friday morning, the first time I saw my first patient die. I think that's how he starts. He's a GP. He's an A&E GP in the NHS. And so you're hooked. And so I knew that I had to hook people really quickly. And there's multiple ways you can do it. And Amrish was the one who pushed me to do a 3-dimensional approach to it. It was so ballsy, dude, because I don't know if this fact is correct, but I may be the only or first TEDx speaker in the history of TEDx to take a selfie on stage. Like, I don't think it's ever been done before, at least not to my knowledge. No one's called me out on that. If you found someone, then please let me know. But I wanted to, because we often, like, if you want to land a point, you've got different tools and you've got different vehicles to land a point. You can go deep and kind of really ground yourself and sad and bring me into the emotion. Or you can go like really high into the future, vision, laughter, that you play with emotions.
Yeah.
And so the first one, it was doubling down. I went on this character, like this caricature of the entrepreneur, the superstar entrepreneur who's got a perfect life online and who's absolutely smashing their goals. And, and I just got so frustrated at that bullshit of like watching this online going like, you're lying. Yeah. I know you. You're broke. You're struggling. You're living a nightmare and you're selling dreams. What are you doing? And I'd fall into that trap. That's what's really important. I'd fall into that trap of pretending like I was this thing when in fact I had a very different reality. And so I went all in, did this very big, bold character, and it worked, man. Like, it
worked very well.
I still get messages from people saying, "Oh my God,
great intro,
saying
great
that
intro.
And blah 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 this stuff."
Yeah. And also, Mark, how do you go about not just the intro, but the talk itself had a very clear structure?
Yeah.
With some key messages. Is there anything you do to create the structure, which is not only clear, but also original and enjoyable? Is there anything that you do in terms of preparation, whatever comes to your mind?
Yeah. So I've got a structure, and I actually teach this on my Accelerator with my thought leaders. So basically, it's really easy. It's simple. It doesn't mean it's easy, but it's simple. And effectively, it's the way that the process that I teach is you've got to think about what's your topic. Okay, so what's the topic that you're trying to talk? So most people you're going to speak to when they say, I want to talk about something, you say, what do you want to talk about? And they'll get really vague and broad. They'll say like leadership, entrepreneurship, marketing, sales, presentation, whatever, right? They'll go with this really big thing. And it's like, okay, and then what's your twist? Like, what's your take on it? Why was it interesting? And this comes from journalism backgrounds of people. When you ask them, when they go and pitch their editors, they have to say, we're going to do a story about X and it's interesting because of Y. Now, the example that Alex Bloomberg uses when he talks about this, he goes, we're going to do a story about homeless people. And it's interesting because most people suffer from alcoholism or mental health issues. Now, I'm going to caveat this. This is an example to show the difference between what's an interesting hook and an obvious hook. It's kind of obvious to a lot of people. Like, a lot of people will, if you ask them, like, do you think most people who live on the street have some sort of maybe, addiction or mental health issue? Or they'll be like, yeah, most likely. What if I told you, we're going to do a story about homeless people because it turns out that there is such a thing as a homeless gene. Then you're like, oh, what? Do I have that gene? It's not true, by the way. But you see the difference, like, and that's how it's a twist. So you've got to figure out what's your twist, like what's your take on that topic. If you don't know it, you can start with a wide topic, and then you can go into the research and actually find that twist. But once you've got your twist, then I've got a formula, and it's basically really simple. I kind of go through, okay, what's the start? What's the 3 main points I need to land? How do I want to leave people feeling, thinking, or acting differently? And then once you've got your through line through that, that's how you build your talk. And then the hardest thing is editing. But I think because, I spent a bit of time, doing videos on YouTube and that kind of stuff, and podcasts, you've got to be really good at chopping stuff out, right? So like, I don't know if anybody listening has heard my podcast, The Unconventionalists, but you've got to be good at like, okay, what do we keep? What do we cut? And when you're in your talk, like anyone who's written a book, it's the same thing. You need an editor to come and chop it out and say, look, I'll give you an example. I've been giving since COVID-19 kicked off, I've been booked to give this talk in organizations to help leaders thrive in chaos and helping their teams feel connected, productive, and optimistic. And when I designed that, I had a couple of days to design the whole thing, map the whole thing, create the deck, map the whole talk. And it was like 180 slides. And turns out you can't do 180 slides in 90 minutes, in case anybody had, any doubts. So I had to chop. And even today, just before this call, I jumped on another session with an organization. There's about 34 employees and leaders and stuff. And even though I did still chop, it still needs more chopping. Like, and it continuously gets chopped. And the tip I got from a friend of mine, she said, I love this. She said, how do you want people to feel? And then you reverse engineer from there. So, usually people will say, I want you to feel a certain way. I want you to think differently in a certain way. I want you to act differently in a certain way. And those really are the 3 things that you've got to think of. And if I could give a tip on people, again, this is what I tell my students all the time. There's 2 types of speakers. There's speakers who want to leave a talk, whether it's virtual or online, and they want people to say, oh my God, what an amazing speaker. They were great. She was amazing. She was inspiring. She was so good. And then the second speaker who want them to look around and ask themselves, whoa, I never thought about that. I'm now going to change. I'm on the latter. Like, that's my ambition. My goal is, I just post on Instagram. My ego loves to hear when my clients are super happy. Like, I just delivered a talk. Literally 4 minutes later, I got an email from the client saying, oh my God, I do a flurry of emails. Thank you so much. And she copy pasted an email she got from one of the participants. And my egos go, yeah, love it. Amazing. Oh my God, tell me how wonderful I am. We all love that. But what I'm more interested in is, what are you going to implement? Yeah. What's going to change? Like, how can you sustain this optimistic approach to the future and thought leadership?
Yeah. And also, Mark, one of the things I've noticed in that talk, but also in other occasions, is that you seem to be very relaxed on stage. Now, so the question is that true? In that, do you not feel at all any maybe nerves or a little bit of anxiety? Or if you do, and you know how to channel that, how to handle that, do you have any tips, anything for those who do feel a bit nervous when speaking in public?
Yeah, so there's, I can unpack that question. There's a few things I want to talk about it. One of them is, turns out that when you look at the sort of biochemical effects of anxiety or stress-induced events with excitement, they're the same. So our heart rate increases, our glands salivate more, our palms get sweaty. Like, all the exact same feelings are the same with excitement or fear. The difference is how you kind of reframe it, right? So I just wanted, everyone feels like, there's a great study of, I think it's Bruce Springsteen, that says that when he starts feeling those nerves before a concert, he knows he's ready to perform. So I would definitely still feel some sort of, what do you even call it? Like excitement, nerve, whatever it is. But my big belief, and I say this to all my clients and all my members of my accelerators, it's like, being yourself is good for business. Okay. So whatever you are, if you're an asshole or a kind person, just be yourself. Don't pretend to be someone you're not. If you're a nice guy trying to be an asshole, it's not going to come across. If you're an asshole trying to be nice, it's just not going to work. be yourself, because it's the way that you connect with people. The other thing is, so actually, just a side note, since we've gone on Zoom, I've had clients tell me that they feel way more comfortable talking to clients and organizations via Zoom than they do in person. Just
interesting.
Side note. The other thing is you've got to take this with a pinch of salt, everything I tell you, because I've been doing this for years.
Yeah.
Like literally been for years. Stage is my second home. And what I aspire to do, and maybe you can relate to this because you've seen me in real person, you've seen me now talking, you've seen me on stage. I want to be the same person. I want to be the same guy, whether we have a beer, or that I'm delivering to 100 people or 1,000 people or whatever. I want to be the same guy. And that's what I've always promised myself. When I started my business, when I started teaching people this stuff, my promise was, I want you to be the same person so that you don't have separation of identity and feel like you need to be a certain person in one environment and another. And I just noticed that you and I have got reverse match color coded clothes,
That's true.
Navy blue t-shirt, I have a navy blue cardigan, and
that's true. I didn't notice that.
But yeah, but just practice gets better. But I mean, mate, I was 4 years old the first time I went on a stage. Like, my mum was a school teacher and she was putting up school plays, and I was like a bush or a tree or a back dancer on this play. So I remember the first time I saw a stage and I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. And so I don't dissociate a stage from a room. And you know what? I think that is probably like one of the best tips I could give to people listening to this is stop making up that you need to be a different person when you speak on stage because you're human. Yeah. It's like, but it's crazy. It's, what's his name? John something, the guy who came on my show who teaches people how to write emails for people to buy. And he loved this. He basically told me in the interview, he's like, people make up that once you become the CEO of a company, you stop being human. You don't, you still the same. You still like humor. You still like people who are ballsy and all that kind of stuff. So just, the work that I do when I walk my clients through my Impact Accelerator, really you're peeling layers of like, how do we get to be more you? What let go of that stuff, not serving you. What's your impact? How do you show up most powerfully? How do you connect with an audience? How do you clarify a message? What's your vision? How do we get that package in a way that when you go out and talk, whether that's online or in person, you feel excited and you feel ready. And I think being yourself is one of the keys to that.
Oh, definitely. And I'm sure it impacts everybody, every single person on this planet. Another question, Mark, I wanted to ask you is, I want to go back to one of the things you mentioned at the beginning. You said when we first met, you had this thought a couple of years ago, you wanted to get better at selling on stage in a more authentic way. I'm just curious, what have you learned in the last couple of years in that area? Yeah,
I'm still, to be honest with you, I'm still playing with that. Like, I've definitely done some work around it. I've found some really helpful resources. I guess the big mindset I had to change around was that actually selling is serving. And I really had to change my mindset around that because it felt like what I wanted to do is give you all this information and value, but I felt awkward asking you for money for it, which was weird, which is so weird because I was in sales for 10 years, raised millions for companies and sold, and and I'm really good at it. I used to train, and I still do, train people in how to sell, because I think when you're a leader in your field, when you're a thought leader, you're selling something, whether it's an idea, a product, a service, a vision. So you've got to learn how to engage people, enroll people, aligned around this common vision. So I think what happened, first of all, I found mentors and people who I really enjoyed the way that they sold, because it didn't feel like some scammy, salesy stuff. It was very kind of authentic. It was like, look, here's the deal. You got two options. Either you continue on your own and you're going to struggle, and here's what the future's going to look like, or you let me help you and my team so we can get you faster, save you money. You're going to have to invest a little bit first, but you're going to get return on investment. It's not for everybody. And if you're in, you're going to have an amazing time. If you're not, that's cool. Yeah. And just being really pragmatic about it, not getting emotionally involved with people saying, no, can I get it? None of that. And so now it's actually just been really fun. Like, it's interesting the way that I kind of sell programs now. I haven't even gone public in a really long time. I just reach out to a few people I know might benefit from it. And I'll say, look, I'm about to launch this program. It's going to be a 10-week online accelerator, trying to help people who want to have a powerful message, say in a way that it feels really compelling, grow a tribe, grow a community, all this kind of stuff. And then are you interested? Yes or no? You know, it's basically that simple. And if you're interested, I'll give you the details. Here's the investment. Here's the cost. Blah blah blah. All that stuff.
Oh, makes sense. And you mentioned, and if any of my questions don't lead anywhere, Mark, no problem. I can rephrase them or change them, because you mentioned that perhaps there are a couple of people or some people from whom you've learned recently or in the last years when it comes to selling on stage or selling in a more authentic way. Would you like to name a few? If you have some.
So I mean, so a few people come to mind. So Taki Moore, I really enjoy. So I saw him live, and I've seen, you know, I really enjoy his style because he's we've got a similar impact in the sense that we're kind of lively and fun and use humor, but he's like on another level. But I really like him. So he makes it very straightforward and easy. And I've seen him live sell like $24,000 products and services, and done in a really kind of, hey, here's the thing, it's not for everyone, if it's for you, come and see me. And I really enjoyed that. So that would be definitely one of them. We both, like a mate of mine, you also know him, Daniel Priestley. Really enjoy, actually, I was having a conversation with, like, so much so, actually, this is a testimony to Dan. There's this guy, I forgot his name now. He's done this whole series called The Contrepreneur. I really recommend it. If you haven't seen it, go and check it out on YouTube, The Contrepreneur. And he exposes all these fake gurus and fake entrepreneurs who sell this stuff. It's a great, great series. Go and check it out. And in one of his videos, he said he went to this event with Gary Vaynerchuk and all these other people.
Oh, Unsuccessful Resources, isn't it?
Yeah, something like that.
And I saw it.
Yeah, and he basically says that he goes to this thing and it was a pitch fest and it was awful. And he says, although there was one person on stage who was amazing, it was Daniel Priestley, and he names him. And the reason because when Dan was there, he was like, look, there's a bunch of free books at the end. True. Go and take them. If you want to come and do my program, great, come and talk to us. And they're like, what, you're not pitching us? No, that's the thing. So I think from people like that, like how to be of service while selling, that's been really interesting for me. I've still got lots to work on, for sure. Because my challenge is I want to give so much value that what I need to do is strip back and give a little bit and then incentivize people to want more. Yeah. That's kind of what I've been learning. But it's like anyone, I think it's a work in progress.
Yeah, and I wanted to share a story very quickly connected to what you've just said about the event with Daniel. Now, I was there. I was at the event with Gary V, and Daniel was there. And it's true, I hated the event. It was like 3 days, one pitch after another, selling bullshit. And I bought Daniel's Accelerator the day after the event because he was the only one. And I told him he was the only one who had nothing to sell that day. And I bought from him.
Yeah. But, and yet he was selling.
Yeah, but in a different way,
But there you go. That's what I mean when I'm talking about, you know, anybody listening to this, you need to find your own, what works for you.
Yeah.
Like legit, like some people are going to be super hard sales and they love that and that works for them, and aggressive and closing and it's not me. And the reason why I've struggled more with this than like what people might perceive is because my early career, my job was to sell hardcore. Like I would go in, but I would speak to like CEOs and chairmen and ministers and government officials, and I'd be like selling them. We're talking from anything from $100,000 to $500,000 pitches, and they'd be like, "No, I'm going to think about it." I was like, "What are you going to think about? What have I not explained? I'm sorry, that's on me." Maybe they've got a question. Oh yeah, it's a marketing thing. Well, here's the deal. Am I right in thinking that this kind of budget is above marketing budget? They're going to have to come back for you to sign it? Yeah. So how about we sign it here? And then I go and do I mean, literally, this is just like, I'm getting like PTSD moments of remembering it, but that's what I used to do. And it was all about closing on the spot. And you know, and I was good at it and I hated it. And so it really stayed with me, this kind of like, if you're selling, you're being inauthentic and sleazy, all this kind of stuff. And so that's why it's been a journey for me to re-heal really my relationship to sales. And now it's like, I'm unapologetic about the products and offerings I put out in the world because I genuinely know that they serve. I know that people get results. I know that people, when they work with me, their life's changed. So I've just become way better at owning that and saying, look, if you want transformation, great, let's work to that. If you don't, good luck. No offense to anyone. And I'll see you down the line when you've realized that you can't do it on your own.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. Mark, another question, and this is not, I guess, as important as the last one, and I'm sure it's obvious to you, but not to many people who are listening, and it's about presentation design.
Yeah.
Because if you look at the way most people and companies use slides, we still see so much text and bullet points.
Yeah.
In your TEDx talk, and I know that that's your approach, you had visuals which were very visual, just maybe no words at all, just a big image, which really amplified your content.
Yeah.
And I like that very much. Now, for those who are not familiar with this, could you tell us why your approach to presentation design is very visual and simple?
Okay, so yeah, I agree. So I've sat through meetings. I remember when I used to work in the corporate world, you sit through meetings for like decks of 50 slides with like 16 bullet points and 20 reference, and you die. It's like, you're just like, oh
you die.
God. Oh, but it's just awful. It's just terrible. And so I want to say, I'm trying to think back about my first kind of talks I used to run. Did I have more text? Yeah, I think I must have had more text originally, right, when I first started off. But eventually what happened is that, so this is something I teach, but not a lot of people actually realize that this is what goes into each of my talks. So I script all my talks. So I write down everything. So I write it all down. And the reason why I do this is that I want to be professional. I want to know how long my talks are. I want to make sure that I stick to the right amount of time. Yeah. So like if the client says you've got 60 minutes, you've got 90 minutes, you've got 40 minutes, 20 minutes, 15 minutes. And by the way, we could have a whole other conversation about like the pitfalls of public speaking. And I've had events where I'm there, we're supposed to schedule for over an hour, and I get a tap on the shoulder from the CEO and he says, we're gonna have to shut down in half an hour. Can you do your talk in 20 minutes? And you have to adapt on the spot. But the reason why I say this is I map out the whole talk, then I record myself reading it out, and then I know where I need to cut. Like, okay, actually this is too long, I'm losing people, where is it boring, no. And then this is my magic process, is that I basically have, for each main thought or idea, I'll have a title, okay? So let's say, like, I'll give you an example, that this deck I just created there for companies and leaders around how to thrive in COVID-19. I'll talk about, right, the current situation we're in. Why is it that everyone is freaking out about what's happening? Is because we've got a three-headed dragon happening. We've got a financial crisis, an isolation crisis, and a human crisis, okay? So I'll write it out, but effectively there's three different things: human crisis, financial crisis, isolation crisis. So that will be a title. And then once I go through that whole process, I then look at just my titles, and that title is going to be a slide, and there's going to be an image that represents that. And so let's say for, what have I got for human crisis at the moment? Human crisis, I'll have like maybe someone really scared. Okay. I'll have someone that's really scared. And for Zoom, I actually recommend more text than I normally do, 100%. Like I actually had more text on Zoom than I ever had before, because it also keeps visually people stimulated. And if you have quite a few slides that are flipping, they're like, oh my gosh, did I miss a slide? And then you've got to go back and watch. And the honest truth is that the way that my memory works is that I then map out in my head. I know it's the way I do it is like a roadmap. So I know that there's going to be like 10 points, right, that I'm making. For example, human crisis, financial crisis, isolation crisis, and then our need for safety. Actually, we need to override our operating system. So it's a script in my head. I know that like chapters, like chapter 1, chapter no. Okay, cool, in my head. And then the visuals prompt that. Yeah. And the reason why I learned that is that I can learn what visual comes next. So if my PowerPoint presentation breaks down, I can give the talk just remembering, oh, the scary face is just after the piggy bank. Oh, the piggy bank is, and that's how I learn it. And I know that it works because I've had clients and people say, oh, it was really interesting. And like Dan, so this is funny, right? So I speak at Dan's events, and he calls me up one day because one of the first kind of talks that I gave a couple of years ago at one of his events, he says, you've got 120 slides, mate, and you've got 20 minutes. And I'm like, yeah, brace yourself. You're going to see it. And it's a really quick, snappy style. Like, and I use humor quite a lot. And so it works. When it works, it's great. When it doesn't, it's a catastrophe. And I've had it where the clicker doesn't work. Yeah. And it is the most awkward thing that can happen, because suddenly it just breaks everything. It's like,
doesn't work. Yeah.
No, it doesn't work. Yeah. And you have to improvise, and it threw me off. I had to recover, and I was able to recover, but for an inexperienced speaker, it can be a total nightmare.
Yeah. So I think, we need to do, I think, episode two someday to talk about all the challenges and the pitfalls. Yeah. Now, you said you speak at dance events. Now, I know what you mean. And what that means is that you have experience not only giving presentations like a TED Talk, a 20-minute talk, but also running maybe one-day workshops or long workshops also for your own business. What are some of the differences? What do you think? Any thoughts in terms of the main differences between presenting effectively in a 20-minute presentation and presenting or communicating effectively in a one-day workshop?
Well, I think the metaphor I use is like cooking. So if you don't know how to cook, you can cook for one, you can cook for 10, but then it's a very different skill when you start scaling that to 100 people. But the premise are the same: good ingredients, good menu. Like the principles are the same. You've got to always think about what are you trying to get your audience to get out of, whether that's your talk or delivery. Now, a talk to sell is very different than a workshop to deliver value. Yeah, it's different because a talk, when you're selling, I say selling. So let's say when I go and speak at Dan's event, right? When he does his half day or full day KPI events in London, and then he invites me to go and talk about profile. What you do is you educate about a problem, you acknowledge that it's something that most people relate to, and then you give a few solutions, and then you tell them, but here's what the real problem is, and here's what you're going to need. And if you want it, I've got it. If you don't, that's cool. So it's a different structure. Like I would say, like for example, you saw my webinar the other day, right? Yeah, I was there. Yeah. So the difference is that was a webinar for me to give back. It was like, we're doing COVID-19. I want to give all of this. But if I run the same webinar again, which I probably will on the 1st of May, and you can tune in to see me how I do it, I would structure it differently, because it would be to invite people to come and take part in my online podcasting masterclass that they can get online. And the way that I would do it is I would just say, look, here, there are 12 steps that you need to launch a successful podcast. We don't have time to go through 12. We're going to go through 3, and here they are. But remember, you need all these 12, and I've got them for you. And here's what I would like for you to do next. So it's a different in that sense, but you've got to learn, like, again, cooking. If you can't cook basic food for you, don't scale. Don't try and cook for 100 people or 10 people. It's not going to work. So that would be, but the approach would be the same. Again, what are you trying to land? What's your goal? What's your call to action? All this kind of stuff.
I like the analogy. And the last, definitely one of the last questions, maybe the last question, Mark, is, now we are recording these in the middle of this pandemic worldwide. So at least for the time being, we can only present online through technology.
Yeah.
Now, and you have a lot of experience, not only with face-to-face presentations, but also online communication, online presentations, podcasting, and videos. Now, again, based on your experience, what are some of the key differences between presenting well face-to-face and presenting well or communicating well in an online environment?
Good question. So you've got pros and cons for both. And I think different people will prefer one another. So what I said earlier, I've heard that people who use Zoom find it less daunting because you see less the eyes on you. And so they found it, like one of my clients was telling me that he was delivering workshops for companies, live talks and stuff. And he said, wow, I actually felt less daunting, less scary online than it did in person. So personally, I think that when you're doing online, you have a lot more to think about than you do when you're in person. What I mean by that is you need to make sure your technology is solid. You need to make sure that you're in a space where you can hopefully not be interrupted. You've got to make sure that your webcams work, that your microphone works. Like, you've got to make sure that your foundations are solid, right? And then on top of that, you then got to learn how to use the tool properly. So like Zoom, we're using Zoom right now, but if you're using Zoom, which most people are going to be doing, you've got WebEx, you've got a bunch of other tools, but most people are going to use Zoom. You've got to learn, and I'll be honest, the more I use it, the more I'm like, there's a few features I'm like, this is not intuitive at all. Like, why can you not just do this? And this is quite clunky. And so my gift to people listening to this is this: if you're doing online presentations, it's okay to say at the start, look, I'm presenting time, we're using these tools, you know, I might look a bit awkward as I'm trying to figure out this technology to get, you know, the presentation like is, you know, bear with me.
And you did that last week, I remember.
But you have to, because but again, it's honest, it's true. I'm not saying that.
I like that.
Because it's true. It was my first webinar that I was doing, and I was like, oh, and we had 150.
You said, Mark, I still remember. You said something like, "Bear with me while I pretend I know what I'm doing," which I don't. And I remember that. I liked it.
Well, because we all try and pretend, and when you pretend, it's so much harder. It just is. Just life is harder. So, but here's what I would say: be really, really clear about your presentation, your deck, and online you need to do way more engagement with people than you would in person. And engagement simply says, like, I start all my talks by saying, hey, before we begin, you know, let me know, can you hear me? And can you see me? Just give me a thumbs up or a yes. Okay. Then the next slide is like, let me know where you're tuning in from. Where are you listening from? Where are you? And like, on the webinar, it was amazing, man. We had people from New Zealand, Argentina.
US.
I mean, it was crazy. People, so you read people out, there were comments, and you keep people engaged. So you have to break up your chunks of delivery with engagement, way more than you do in person. So like in a 60-minute virtual workshop that I run, I probably have 6 to 10 at least touch points where I engage and I ask them questions and to respond. And that would be the biggest difference. And also, you've got to remember that camera saps about 10 to 15% of your energy. So even if you don't feel like it, you can come across way more gloomy and doomy online than you would do in person. So you've got to be a little bit more kind of, I don't know. I don't want to say don't perform, because that's not, I don't want you to perform. I want you to connect. But I would say you've got to engage and be really on it. So manage your energy, you know. Baccarat says this best. He says, you want to build a team, but you can't even manage your team. And he talks about time, energy, attention, and money. And one of them is your energy. Like, you've got to manage your energy. And so you've got to show up on the call ready. You've got to be on time. You know, you've got to learn the technology. You've got to do all that stuff, like, because you've got extra layers to take care of that you wouldn't normally. Like up until COVID-19, I would get people to book the stuff for me. So I would get on a plane, I'd get flown out, I'd show up, I'd check in my hotel, I'd run for my talk, I'd go at the events, I'd rock up on stage, give my talk, get the applause, and go. And it was so much easier, you know, just in terms of the deck I had to prepare and all that stuff. But now I'm having a lot of fun. Like I'm averaging about 3 talks a week at the moment online, and I think it's a very cool tool. You've got to also acknowledge that a lot of people are tired and are completely zoomed out.
No, it's true. We have an extra barrier today, which is technology, but it can be. You definitely managed to make it very engaging and interesting last week. So well done.
Thanks. Appreciate that.
Actually, before we close, one of the best things I liked about your podcast, about your webinar, and I'm going to steal it from you if you don't mind, is that you started, as people were tuning in, you had a background music. It made a big difference. I had never, I mean, very simple, but I had never seen something like this. So
well, but you see, but that's what I'm talking about when I'm talking about you've got to experiment with things. And I've been using it since, even with my corporate clients. And
today I have a webinar. At 5 o'clock I have a webinar. Sorry, Mark, I'm going to do it.
So but what you do is, it's really easy. Like have a landing deck, right? Like have a landing page that maybe says your name, the title of the webinar, and have the music playing in the background. Don't have your camera on yet. And so when people arrive, they get that little kind of music, and, you know,
it's an event, isn't it?
Yeah, it's like an event, because I use music in my live events. I constantly use music to pace the energy up and down. You know, if I'm going through, like, let's go through a signature story and unpack that for a moment. It's going to be more kind of cool, chill music, so people can get in that zone and space of reflection. But if I want you to get really energetic and active and go around and share stuff, then it's going to be much more upbeat. So I use music a lot for tempo as well.
It's powerful. Music is powerful. And Mark, before we wrap up, are there any, and if nothing comes to your mind, no problem, I have one last question. Are there any books or resources or people to follow, mentors, blogs, especially when it comes to communication impact, presentations?
100%.
What comes to your mind?
So the first thing is, people, if you want to get resources on books, you can go to the unconventionalists.com/resources. I've got a bunch of books I've actually listed, public speaking books, that kind of stuff. From the top of my mind, the books on public speaking I'd recommend is The Breakthrough Speaker by Smiley. I think it's Poswolsky. I could be wrong. I'm pronouncing it. One of the best books.
I'll find it and put it in the.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I was reading that book. I was going, oh my God, I wished everyone knew this, because it's everything. It's like he's tried and tested. He's gone through it. He's legit, and he writes like he gives everything. So that 100%. If you're an aspiring speaker, start with that. There's the Storytelling Secrets by Carmine.
Gallo.
Yeah, that's one of my go-to books for my clients that I always buy a copy for them. And then Baka, I like him. I really like him. He's like Marmite. You love him or hate him, but I like him. I like his style. I like the way that he is unapologetically himself, and he makes a lot of sense. So I like the way that he shows up, because I think it's an invitation and an opportunity for us to say, what does that give me permission of? And then you've got, of course, the Speaker Lab. Amazing. If you want to check out Grant Baldwin and Eric Ream and their team, great podcast, great online product. That's probably what.
That's great. Thank you very much. And I'll find all of these resources and put them in the description. Mark, before we close, and thank you so much. It's been super interesting and valuable. Is there anything else? Any final messages? A question that you would have liked me to ask you? I haven't done it. Anything else at all you would like to share?
So here's I want to share something that I'm working on the moment that I'm really excited about. I think, especially during these times when we're kind of locked in and it's very easy to be pessimistic and kind of look at all the negativity. I think now more than ever, we need leaders to step up and have a really optimistic vision of the future. That you can go into your community and say, look, I know it's hard, but we're going to get through this, and we're going to get through this together. And so I'm looking for people who are stepping up in their communities, who want to serve, who want to have an impact, who want to raise an influence. And if that's you, and you want to be using this medium of speaking as one of the ways that you want to impact, whether that's online or in person, as part of your tools, then reach out to me, because I'm going to be launching an online accelerator shortly, and it's going to be very curated. And it's going to be part of my mission of inspiring 10,000 leaders by 2030 to find their quest and live their purpose. And so I'm going to look for the first batch of those leaders. And I'm really excited about that, because I want to teach everything I've learned. I want to distill everything, from your visions, your values, your mission, your story, your audience, all that stuff. And I'm really excited about that. So if that's you and you want to make a bigger impact, then get in touch.
That's
Mark
amazing.
Leruste, by the way. It's at Mark Leruste, MarkLeruste.
Oh, that's amazing. And I can encourage everybody, our listeners as well. Mark, I'm speaking to the others now, to those who are listening. Mark is one of the most interesting and compelling people I know. So definitely check out his work, because it's truly remarkable. Mark, thank you very much again. And it's now 23rd of April, recording this. Let's hope that we can see each other soon somewhere in London.
Yeah.
And in the meantime, I wish you all the best with your business, with your family, with your friends, and let's keep in touch.
Thank you. Grazie. Appreciate it. It's for all that you do, and keep doing the good work.
Thank you very much, Mark. Cheers.
If you enjoyed this episode of the Ideas on Stage podcast, there are many more you might like, so please subscribe, leave us a review, and tell us what you think. You can find many more ideas on business communication at ideasonstage.com, or by searching for Ideas on Stage on iTunes, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks for listening, and goodbye for now.